webinar two presentations from Staffordshire and Blackburn and Darwen. What I'm calling upstream diversion prevention. It's almost like pre-diversion diversion, but also featuring effective multi-agency practice. These issues and these challenges and also these solutions have come out of the Youth Justice Centre Quality Assurance Framework that has been running since 2016. We were quite delighted, actually, as the move towards child first practice has taken place strategically and operationally over the last few years, because certain elements of the framework have shone a spotlight on those effective elements of practice, not just what happens in a youth offending service, but across the partnership of service providers that a youth justice service will work with. This is why we are calling these workshops uh, Child First Effective Partnership Practice. And we have adopted our award process and adapted it so that any setting that reaches the quality lead status within the process can also get a child first commendation for that effective practice. I just, before we start, would love to give congratulations to two areas that this month have made a mark. We have congratulations to the Norfolk Area Partnership for the first time attaining a quality mark, and congratulations to Croydon for being redesignated quality lead status with a child first commendation. I dare say we'll be hearing from Croydon in the near future. But let's move on. Blackburn and Darwen have been at the forefront of this process since 2016. They were one of the first areas to get quality lead status and have been recently redesignated. What really excited me about Blackburn and Darwen is the belt and braces working in partnership, which has really impacted on the lives of young people because the service is quick, timely. There seems to be very little waits for assessments and for action to take place. We'll hear from them. Staffordshire, I've been, I was really impressed by their area partnership ecology, the way that, if you like, that the needs of young people are being met, understood, and assessed very early in the system. But then two particular elements of their service provision has also excited me. But let's start off with Blackburn and Darwen. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and introduce you to the Blackburn team. So over to you guys if you would like to introduce yourselves and start the presentation. We are all eyes and ears. Thank you.
Superb. Thank you very much, Marius. Appreciate that. Can you just confirm that you can see the screen? Are we sharing
Absolutely.
successfully?
Very
Thank
good.
you. Yeah, myself and Sharon would like to talk to you today about our multi-agency approaches that we adopt in Blackburn with Darwen. The MAR meetings that we hold here are the multi-agency risk management meetings, and the Transforming Lives panels are perhaps more bespoke to this area. We'll come to those secondly. So Sharon, if I can just come to you.
No.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Fluffing my lines already here. Yeah, in 2022, we worked to get the redesignation that Marius has just alluded to. We got the Microlink redesignation with the Quality Lead Award and the Child First Commendation. We're very proud to receive that. The teams around the child work together, coordinated through forums such as our MAR meetings and our Transforming Lives panels. These are all attended by a variety of agencies and services, including the local police, health, social care, early help, and YOS-YGS. As a streamlining of responses, as Marius alluded to, we asked the question, who is best placed to support this child? The preventative work has driven down first-time offending rates. We are happily able to record those, and the levels are substantially lower than regional statistical neighbours and national rates, which is a considerable achievement. So.
Okay, so yeah, so we're going to speak first about the MIMES, and apologies to all of you. I know that everybody does have risk management meetings, everybody holds them, they all call them something different, but ours are called MIMES in our area, and we've just been asked to kind of give an overview of how they work. for Blackburn with Darwen. Okay, yeah, that's working. So MIMES basically are when a young person is assessed as high or very high risk of causing serious harm, high or very high risk in relation to their safety and well-being, or meet the MAPA criteria, then these will be referred into and managed via the MIME meetings. Okay, so the purpose of these are to ensure effective management oversight and multi-agency planning and reviews for all cases, through informing the identification of actions to be included in the young person's plan and to address the risks, ensuring all interventions and actions identified at MIME meetings are delivered. Okay, so attendances at MIME. It's mandatory for individual case managers responsible to attend the meetings. And then there's a whole range of other attendees who will be invited. That will be the YJS police officer for the purpose of sharing intelligence relating to the young person. Other specialist staff, including probation officers, if relevant, victim officer, health workers, education officers, accommodation officers, all of who are actively involved in the delivery of the intervention plan, whose presence at the meeting would positively enhance the development of risk plans. So it's getting them all around the table at the earliest opportunity to be able to offer their support and advice in the management of that case. Other agency professionals, such as children's social care, who are actively involved with the young person, or whose presence at the meeting would positively enhance, again, the management of risk. And then that's just stuff this about must have all been invited if they're on the sex offender register. Obviously, crucial to all this in the context of this presentation is the health workers who are invited. So that can be somebody from the SEND team, somebody from FCAMS, anybody who's relevant to that young person or who we feel may be able to contribute will be invited. Okay, so how does this support stand? So it's about the information sharing between all of the agencies, about getting that information at the right time, and that collaborative approach. So making sure that everybody is on board, everybody has an understanding of what services there are, what services are available, and what support and advice can be offered around the table. The relevant referrals are made swiftly, so this really aids that process in that there's a level of oversight, and if we're struggling at any point with any referrals, or not understanding where to make those referrals, or maybe there's some kind of gap, that can be plugged relatively quickly. Yeah, again, any oversight of any gaps in service or avoidable delays, and positive outcomes for children and young people, in that they're getting that support and that service at a very early stage. Okay, so just to kind of put that in some kind of context, we've got a case study. We've called him Billy. So Billy was, at the point of being referred to the YJS, he was awaiting an EHCP assessment. And as part of the assessment process, his case manager chased this up with our SEN department as well as with school. He was attending a school but he was struggling to cope in classes. And he was able to share through this process that his own wishes were that he wanted to do something more practical and vocational. As part of his order, he did complete community reparation, where he had the opportunity to demonstrate that in that kind of environment, when completing practical activities, he thrived and he was able to participate and engage. This was all advocated via our MIME process, where his case manager was able to discuss his wishes and his feelings, and how well he did manage when undertaking the practical tasks, because they matched and suited his needs best. So the chair, I should have perhaps mentioned earlier, we always have the chair of the MIME meetings is always our service lead, so it's pitched at that level, so that there's some, there's a senior management level there who can, offer those resources, have that level of oversight. So the chair of the meeting was able to recommend that it was really crucial that alternative placements were sought for him, and able to give that additional layer of authority. The barrier, as I mentioned, was the EHCP, but via the MIME process, we were able to share concerns around the time it had taken to complete that, and that was escalated, which resulted in it being completed shortly after the MOIN process began. Again, yeah, the MOIN process allowed an additional layer of accountability in terms of getting relevant information shared, and parents' views were also shared in this forum, which was again crucial because there was an element of frustration from parents that they weren't being listened to, but we could assure them that via this process we were able to share their views. Billy was supported by his case manager and his social worker in risk management meetings as well, in terms of sharing his and parents' views. And the outcomes achieved were that the AHCP and Offers of Interviews for Alternative Schools were achieved. So it's a really, really positive outcome for Billy. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Steve now to talk about the Transforming Lives panel.
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, here in Blackburn with Darwen, we run what we call the Transforming Lives panels, the purpose of which are, as you can see, to create a bespoke resource to focus on the support needs of not just the child or young person, but a holistic approach for the adults, families and the young people to prevent, where possible, the escalation into statutory services and provide a range of step-down options into universal provision. This process enables professionals to collectively agree a multi-agency holistic package of support that doesn't, as I say, take the child in isolation, but looks at the bigger picture, what's happening for the family, what's happening in the area where the person lives, what are the factors influencing the problems that's faced by the young person. What we found is that the panels lead to a faster response. We set timescales when agreeing actions, and there's more effective step down to universal provision through partnership working and effective signposting. It's an offer of one-to-one support to families and individuals to access local universal provision, and with the wealth of knowledge that comes along to the panels from all different sort of aspects and backgrounds and all the range of services really, including third sector and voluntary parties. The Transforming Lives panel is made up of a range of agencies, as I say, and it's the wraparound support that's important to overcome any challenges they may be facing. The stated aims and objectives, I mean, again, I don't just mean to read through the list you can see there, but it's all around who could provide the best help at the best time for the right families and the adults and for the circumstances that, you know, is bespoke to that family. Needless to say, there's strict confidentiality. So despite there being a lot of agencies sharing a lot of information, there's lots of buy-in on the confidentiality side. Everyone understands that there's the need for that, and it's crucial for the outcomes. The partner organisations always provide feedback and outcomes achieved, as I said before, to timescales. We share learning and feedback with one another. We kind of review our cases in an informal way at the panel. We keep an eye on ongoing cases. We don't refer off to another agency and wave goodbye to it. We do sort of follow it down the road and see what's happening. We identify gaps in local need and we can map the provision accordingly. That can influence commissioning decisions. So it goes right up to the heads of service, any feedback that comes from this. Again, as you would expect, partners adhere to safeguarding policies and procedures, and whenever necessary, if we feel that this approach at this level isn't adequate, we escalate where appropriate. The partners to Transforming Lives always commit to regular attendance and to designate a representative if the main person can't attend. They also commit to the required governance, the quality assurance and administration as requested, and they commit to pre-screening cases from their organisational databases and information sources, which is a very wordy way of saying that we ask people to come prepared and not just sort of arrive and then start looking at what they know about this individual. It works well. Again, I'm not going to read through the list, but you can see just from here who have come along. Lots of health professionals, the police, emergency services, including fire and rescue. We have care networks, foster carers, CVS and Women's Centre and Wish Centre, important for cases where domestic abuse may be a feature. And as I said before, charities and third sector people. Blackburn Rovers Community Trust are also heavily involved. They put on a lot of things locally in the community for young people, schemes linked to ETE, and obviously these are bespoke to any individual who may have SEND or speech and language needs, for example. Another further list of organisations that attend the Transforming Lives panels. So you can imagine it can be quite a rowdy bunch sat around the table. There's a lot of voices and a lot of people from different backgrounds, but getting that holistic approach and getting a wealth of knowledge from a range of organisations is crucial to its success. The case study we've picked just to discuss with you briefly today is Harry. Harry was a 10-year-old boy referred to the Transforming Lives panel due to concerns regarding his antisocial behaviour in his neighbourhood. The panel considered the behaviour and background with all agencies present sharing information. And a common theme that I'm sure many of you on the call will share, it turns out that Harry's issues were speech, language and communication needs. An incredible percentage of the young people that we deal with, as you know, face these issues, not always identified. That can lead to problems down the line, and inclusion and criminalisation, which is the last thing we want. The panel considered who'd be best placed to deliver the support and intervention based on info from all agencies. And with Harry, it was our YGS prevention officer, James, who ended up offering support to address the risks and needs, albeit in league with our partners. The advice was shared at panel and after the panel regarding the best way to work with the child. As I say, we review that his needs were progressed and quite a successful outcome in that he completed his out-of-court intervention successfully. He's not progressed into the criminal justice system, and touch wood, we've not heard any more about him since. Guys, thank you very much for listening to our brief presentation. I will stop sharing my screen now when I suss out how to do that.
Well done, sir.
Thank you very much. Stop
yeah,
share.
You're getting there. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. A couple of questions to the panelists for you to consider, and we'll look at those in a moment. But I'd like to go swiftly on to the Staffordshire team now. There's a number of colleagues who are going to join us: Steve, Chloe, and Casey. Over to you guys, and we'd love to hear the Staffordshire approach to things. Over to you.
Please tell me if you can see that screen.
Casey, it's perfect.
Casey, that's all right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thanks, Sharon and Steve. Really informative, interesting. I think some of the stuff that we talk about is a kind of mirrors some of the things that you're doing as well. Yeah, thanks, Marius, for giving us this opportunity. I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name's Simon Woollett. I'm operations manager with the Youth Offending Service. Worked for the Youth Offending Service for a number of years. Casey is involved as well. She's our effective practice coordinator. She has links across the yachts, child exploitation, missing, and she provides a vital link to lots of services across the county council. And then Chloe, she's our E2E practitioner. She's been in the role since November 19. We did previously have an E2E practitioner, but due to funding issues, unfortunately that was cut. But we identified that it was a vital role that we needed, and with the developments in Staffordshire, we felt we needed that role to be part of any kind of developments, and hence Chloe came into the role then. Casey, we just move on a little bit. Okay. For those of you who are not familiar with Staffordshire, that gives you an idea of where we sit within kind of the country. It is a fairly large county. We have the kind of Peak District to the north, Derby, Nottingham to the east, West Midlands conurbation to the south, and then Shropshire to the west. We have a county council, and then below that is 8 district councils. As you can see, Stoke is a unitary authority, and consequently has its own individual yacht, just working in the Stoke area, but we cover the rest. Some would describe those as interesting facts about Staffordshire. It gives you an idea of the kind of population size. As you can see, the 0 to 19, 185,000. That's slightly down on the previous census. I think it was about 7,000 down. It's predominantly a white kind of population. The language is obviously clearly English. There is some pockets of Polish, Romanian, Punjabi, and Urdu. And as you can see, the some residents, well, 22% of residents of Cannock and Tamworth have no qualifications, which is above the average in Staffordshire, which is 19%, and I think the national average is 18. So that's just a flavour. And there, the density just shows that we are kind of quite a diverse kind of county, with areas of kind of rural areas and then kind of town conurbations. That gives a flavour of where the youth offending service are. Just to give you an idea of some of the numbers we're working with. At the end of December, we had 323 children receiving some kind of support from us. So that gives you an idea of kind of the numbers we're working with. Fortunately, our kind of custodial figures are reducing. So we had 6 children receiving a custodial sentence from April. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the out of court referrals. That is a significant increase for us. As you can see, it's 23% up. Some of the figures you may be interested in would be that the third quarter, we had 184 children start with us, and we are starting to try and get some figures to do with their kind of E2E career. So we identified that nearly half, 47%, had received some kind of suspension. 14 had been previously excluded, and a fifth, 20%, had a current EHCP, which was maintained by Staffordshire. So that gives you some kind of, hopefully, flavour of where we're at and what kind of environment we're working in. I'll hand over to Casey. Casey's going to talk about the vulnerable adolescents program, and then the saplings project, and then Chloe will look at the send hubs and the way that works within Staffordshire, and then also the way her role fits in with that development. So I'll hand over to Casey now.
Hi guys. So our vulnerable adolescents program was started after we did a review of all our files within the children within our statutory, non-statutory and care leavers. We looked at 135 children's files overall and reviewed all of these. Within the reviewing, it enabled us to look at any underlying factors from anything that was contributing to them ending up whether they were in care or within our custody, and for us to highlight any potential gaps in service if there was any indicators. And from the work we did around that, we identified that within the 135 children that we looked at, there was 12 factors that overall were identified within all or not all of the children in there, which then enabled us to have a look at the vulnerable adolescents programme, where we were looking at services and support to match the children. This will give you an idea of the cohorts. So we were looking at 71% of our children that got a bereavement or family member, loss of a family member, the substance misuse, family member in prison. We had a huge amount of children that had got exclusions in school. 61% of those children have got poor attendance and school exclusions, 30% with an undiagnosed health need, and 40% of those have got a speech and language, EHCP, or communication, SEMH, and multiple of them had a number of them. So a lot of the children had several multiple factors that had kind of happened in earlier lives, but had not been picked up and recognised that the impact that would have later on. So what we did that was kind of different than some other approaches, each child was matched to a mentor that was alongside their youth worker within our service. So that was a separate mentor. It looked on interests and skills of the child, their strengths and what they wanted to get out of it, rather than a lot of programs that we sometimes refer to will be matched by capacity, who's got ability and who can pick this child up the soonest to support. This was driven by matched allocate best worker to best child. There was no driven agenda, no preset agenda for the VAST project. So what did the children want to get out of it? What were their wants? What were their needs? What did they want to see? What did they feel make a difference in their lives? So it was very child focused and child support. It was relationship based. That allowed us to give individual plans. We also have started restorative and solution circles, but within those circles was also people that might not know the child, so they didn't come with a pre-agenda of I know this child, this is what might work. We invited all the professionals such as housing and health, even if they weren't supporting that family and child then. That enabled us to kind of have some out of the box thinking, kind of, you know, we say no idea is a silly idea, but throw everything on the table, let's see what we can come up with to support that child. And that enabled us to look wider, holistic, and the family support aspect of that as well. To support the long-term sustainability, we ensured that after the work with the VASP had finished, a lot of our providers and our community partners had their own core business offer. So this enabled us, if they were matched with a mentor, then that child would go on and get whatever their core business was, whether that was a gym, whether that was a community mentor, whether it was a youth group. So after the mentorship, and we supported them to attend something that was positive for them, it enabled us to go on from that. We use the Outcome Star tool, so that allowed the children and the mentors to have a discuss on their monitoring, their intervention. It's very, again, the Outcome Star, if anybody's used that, it's very child focused. It looks at the journey of change, and then we were able to map areas around the Outcome Star to the child's journey as well. So looking at each element of the star, we were able to quantify the beginning, middle and end of the intervention, about where the children sat and where they felt the distance travelled. This also gave us data and kind of for forward thinking about where those children fit, what was the best support for them going forward, and what did our children need. The learning we took from VASP, we videoed a lot of the children, gave us video testimonies after about what they liked about it, and a few children had said, you know, they've been through lots of services, but this was very child focused. They were able to tell us what they wanted. But what we have taken forward from this is we're using the stars now within our triage. So our court disposals have the star assessment within them, as well as our prevention service and as well as the sapling service that we'll go on to. This then aligns to our early help and our partners in Staffordshire, because all partners in Staffordshire are Outcome Star trained, including our schools, education providers, police, health. So it's the same tool with all partners. We match mentors and our workers within our provision to children rather than capacity. We look at solution circles where we need that for a child rather than the usual kind of TAF process or team around the family process. And we're working along our SEND and our virtual schools partners. What it did bring us back to at the end of that is that we had 12 factors that were identified as contributing to offending behaviours and care leavers and children in custody. The identifying factors weren't something that happened when they were later on in teens. The identifying factors were given in early lives when they'd been through trauma, they were disadvantaged and had suffered in their earlier lives, and that hadn't been picked up or supported in an appropriate way, in a trauma-informed way, or supported by school around attendance and exclusions. So from this, we took it forward, and out of that was the sapling project that was born. So the sapling project works on the same factors that we've just discussed about: whole family, solution circles, child centre, promotes resilience. However, we started that at 7 to 11 years. So that was the age where our children, that from the indicators earlier on, were identified as having these contributing factors. So children were, the identifiers were comparable. So it was an unmet SEN need. They hadn't had a positive experience with education. They've got poor attendance and exclusions. So we helped them to gain support at an earlier age. We also looked at whole family and wider support factors. So we're aligned to the one with the SEND and inclusion hubs, and 2 within our supporting families, or what's the troubled families agenda. And in Staffordshire, we're lucky that we've got good data maturity, so we're able to identify and have information sharing from police, health, drugs, alcohol, social care, so we can look at the whole family support needs with all the 12 factors at the same time of allocation. The Sapling project takes referrals from our send and inclusion hubs via the 8 districts. We are part of the schools and education's graduated response. Our practitioners are based within districts and within the community, so we understand the places, the spaces, the community support, and we're based within schools. So they'll be based within, although working for the family and the child, they get to know the teachers, the education, and provide not support for the child, but support for unmet education needs or support for staff and teaching to support the child in a better or more productive manner. We identified partnership meetings. We also attend some of the vulnerability hubs, and it sits alongside our YOS practitioners, but as you can see, it's from a very earlier age. How do we know it's made a difference to our families? We've had feedback from the children and the families themselves. Families are feeling more empowered and feel like it's more of a co-produced service. Schools are recognising that children, sometimes it's not as simple as they have an EHCP or they don't have an EHCP. There is a graduated response to that. They can think outside the box of how to support children. And the biggest one, families feeling empowered to work with schools more effectively. Some of our parents that we're working with didn't have a good education or a good relationship with their education, and then struggled then to support their children with education, and that's been built up through our service as well. We know that one size doesn't fit all. Children are diverse and have strengths and needs, and that goes within whatever. We have to build on their strengths and advocate for the children, and we ensure all our plans for the families are co-produced. So families are treated as an equal partner in that, and we advocate for them in the meetings, the TAF meetings and the solution circles, where we found some people and some partnership arenas, although we'll say it's co-produced, it's kind of a getting the family to agree rather than them being an equal partner in that. So that's something we've worked really hard to support. As I've mentioned in the last one, referrals are through the graduated response and through the send and inclusion hub model. So I'll pass over to Chloe so she can say how that then does a 360 back to the send and inclusion hubs.
Thanks, Casey. I have to apologise, everyone. I don't have a video. I'm having some IT issues, so I am sorry for that. I'm not being rude. Okay, so the Send and Inclusion Hub is something that we have in Staffordshire. It's relatively quite new, so I'm just going to explain what that looks like. There are 3 tiers. So we've got the hubs, the locality management group, and then the partnership board. The hubs are held every half term for every district. So as the ETE practitioner for YOS, I attend 12 in the south, and there's, I think, another 6 more in the north. So there's quite a lot of them. Schools, providers and services are all invited to those meetings and work together to support children with send or inclusion struggles. So just to give you an idea of what that might look like, I attended one this morning for the Burton area. The meeting went on for about 2.5 hours. There was around 30 children discussed, and every child had an individual action plan from that meeting. There were over 40 attendees, so lots of different agencies, all of the schools in the area. So every child is discussed and everything that is discussed is minuted. And then from that, there's an action plan formed, and then it's reviewed at the next meeting. So within that action plan, it can include tasks for myself or an early help worker or the school, or anyone that's involved in the child, really coming together and making that plan for the child, rather than us all working individually. We've all came together and done, and are kind of like working together to get that action plan met for the next meeting, which will then be the next half term. Okay, next slide, Casey, please. So the children discussed in the hub can then be escalated to the locality management group. That gives schools extra support and can determine things like commissioning and whether an EHCP is considered. So if an EHCP is considered and the school puts in an EHCNA, it can usually be kind of not fast tracked, but it can go through a lot quicker if the SEND team know that the child is discussed at locality management group. Next slide, please, Casey. So the next tier is the Inclusion and Send Partnership Board. So it's the link between each district and the county. So like I said, each county has a separate hub. Each district has a separate hub, and then that will then go to the county through the Inclusion and Send Partnership Board. So the board is responsible for monitoring effective use of resources, and the membership must include all of that that's listed there. So the head teachers, the special school head teachers, and the parents are also involved as well. Okay, next slide, Casey. So this is just a diagram of how it all fits together and how the hubs feed into the local offer and the EHCP assessments, then to the partnership group and the strategic partnership board, and then to the health and wellbeing board. So from the little orange ones in the corner, you can see how the hubs kind of escalate upwards and how important they can be for that decision making when it comes to an education healthcare plan. Okay, next slide, please, Casey. So I just want to talk about how I fit into that and how YOS as a service fit into that. So I attend the Send hubs for each district. So that allows us to be involved in the discussions and have an input on decision making when it comes to the children that we're working with. Before each hub, I receive an agenda which allows me to either invite the YOS practitioners that are working with the child or gather updates from my colleagues within my service to be able to share in the hubs so that it can be included in the action plans, so that we as a service are able to monitor that process and be a part of that. I can also advise and guide schools for children that aren't necessarily working with our service. So if a school has questions about whether they think a child would be appropriate for our prevention service, then I can give advice and guidance on that. So it kind of opens our service up a little bit more and doesn't solely focus on the children that we kind of have in our caseload at that moment. Okay, next slide, please. So I just want to talk about what we're focusing on at the moment. So in the last 6 months, we've seen an increase in the number of electively home educated children. So we thought it'd be important to kind of mention that today. In most cases, children are electively home educated to avoid a fine for non-attendance. And the reason for non-attendance is usually because of an unmet need. So we've been working closely with the elective home education officers and their team manager. So we've tried to outline our concerns with the team manager, because the reason that they're kind of being referred to us is for what they're getting up to during the day when they should be at school or should be accessing education from home. So we've tried to have continuous communication with those officers who are supporting the same families that we are, and it's enabled us to complete joint work and conduct appointments together to offer support, so that we're not offering support separately, and it's kind of streamlined and we're doing that jointly. And that relationship has also gave us the opportunity to influence decisions to escalate to education welfare if we know that a child is not accessing any education at all, so that we can have a say in what kind of school is potentially named for that child. So we're also focusing on reducing the risk of suspensions and permanent exclusions. So there's a relatively new team within Staffordshire County Council, and they're focusing on developing a restorative culture within Staffordshire schools. So the relational and restorative practice team, they're identifying risks early of children who could potentially be excluded or might start refusing to come to school. So the way that we support that team is refer any children that we think might kind of meet that category, so that they can have that support earlier to try and prevent that exclusion or that issue in school from escalating, really. I think that might be me. I think, Casey. Yeah.
Guys, colleagues
I think that just shows that all roads kind of 360 round about where we've started, where we've got to, and all roads kind of go back to the same place.
Oh, thank you so much, Casey. If you stop sharing now,
That is a good show.
I do hope I do hope everyone enjoyed those presentations. I just found them so illuminating. Let's just start off with Steve and Sharon first of all. One of the issues that was raised. How does your Transforming Lives panel link perhaps to the Supporting Families program? And also a question about data maturity, because I think that was raised by Staffordshire as well, how important data maturity is and your confidence that the data is right around those children. So Steve and Sharon, over to you.
We're going to talk about the supporting lives first, and I'll talk about the.
Yeah, so we're not on mute, are we?
No.
Oh. Sorry.
You can hear us, can't you?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
So you take it off mute. That was very stealthy of you. Yeah, the Transforming Lives does link into the Supporting Families programme. Referrals can be made to Supporting Families via Transforming Lives. So there is that kind of interlink there. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. And Steve.
And the data maturity question, Casey, yeah, interesting. We've done a lot of work in Blackburn with Darwen to improve our data. There was a time, it was part of the process, Marius is nodding there, because there was a time when we felt we weren't capturing all the information about our caseload that we needed to in relation to SEND and speech and language, for example, and EHCPs. We've done a lot of tightening up of our data gathering in league with our education department and our SEND departments, but also at times it requires like that two-pronged attack really. We need to check with the schools themselves, pick up the phone to the SENCO, pick up the phone to the head if we can, but make sure that our information is up to date. What we found was that previously our data was only as good as the census from the previous January, and so that was an issue that we definitely needed to tighten up on, but yeah, we're always striving to make sure that we're getting it as accurate.
So that might be something to have, and I kind of went through the FIDO, what that is, but our data maturity in Staffordshire, we have live files that are imported to Staffordshire from police, housing, DWP, drugs, alcohol, education, and we can run a report that tells us all for the whole household from one child's name, and then it's updated overnight, so it comes in live time. So it might be something having a conversation about that, because it's
definitely
quite
yeah. Yeah, pinch that idea from you, Casey. Thank you.
No, and I think, guys, what you've highlighted is one of the key issues. When we first did our project, it must have been 7 years ago. Our research showed that data about young people was actually refracted within a local area partnership. So health had some information, social had some information, education had some information, but getting that data together. And everyone uses the GDPR code, don't they? You know, oh, we can't share data. Well, you can share data, and this is so incredibly important around the most vulnerable young people we have. Casey, just on data sharing, strategically, obviously, a decision was made to data share. How difficult was it to actually get everyone around the table to make that data sharing take place?
Initially, because we had our partners and it's under the supporting early intervention, the supporting families umbrella, the key partners for supporting, that's why I asked about supporting families, are police, health, housing and education. Once we got those on board, it was very easy for other partners to see early identification of whole family factors, and what the benefits of that was. So once we got the key kind of main links on board, it was easier to get drugs, alcohol, GPs, mental health, probation. We've kind of got a multitude of people, and then we can share back as well, which helps support their practice and their work.
Of course it would. And could you name the system that you use to integrate that?
It's called FIDO, Family Identification Data Organizer. That is called FIDO, but it's essentially a Power BI system that Excel flat files come into, and it generates on a Power BI.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Fantastic. That was lovely. Coming now to Staffordshire. I'm just reading this. You've got the services matching the needs of the child rather than children put into the pegs and the round holes that the services provide. That I think is a fundamental factor. And then your 12 factors. That's such an important thing. How did that 12-factor model sort of evolve? Did it take about, quite a lot of scrutiny, if you like, about in terms of your data coming in? And also, if you know of Alex Chard's punishing abuse report that he did across West Midlands, which highlighted many of these things, I'd love you to say something about those factors, because that seems such an important stage in the process.
Well, originally it came from we had a number of children go into custody through the who were in the looked after system, and I think, was it 13 cases originally we looked at, and we identified there was some common links between them, and then when we did a kind of deeper look, then the factors that Casey put up were seen to be significant, and then when we looked at other children we're working with, they come into prominence as well. So there's those core things that seem to relate to children and potentially could lead to down the line being involved with us or getting into more serious issues.
Yes.
And again, we tried to identify early, and there does seem to be some kind of common pattern where most children we're working with will have some of those factors in more or lesser degrees.
Absolutely, Simon. And the big data around adverse childhood experiences suggests if a child has 4 aces in the hand, they are 20 times more likely to be incarcerated at some point in their lives.
Yeah.
It's a given, isn't it? That's what it's like. Smoking damages your health. Aces damages your life chances, and it goes beyond. Whoa, it goes beyond SEND, doesn't it? It goes beyond an EHCP. This is
Yeah.
about complex needs. And I think taking the model down to that transition point between primary and secondary, that's also a bit of. Could you say something about that, Casey or Chloe? That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
I think some of the children really struggle, and we've got some excellent primary schools who don't exclude, do support, don't always go out because they've got everything in hand, because it's very pastoral in the primary school, and then they go up to secondary school, and then it's find your own way in the big bad world, and some of the SEND needs and unidentified wellbeing needs are then identified, and that's what's led to the exclusion. So we take a transition work around that. That'll be a longer period, so it's not just about hand holding, but it's going to see the secondary school a bit more, having a video or a virtual map of the school, meeting the teacher and where it's going to be, and it starts a long process before they actually go over. We have holiday clubs in the school they're going to be based in, so we might be in there to make them feel more welcome and supported and safe within that secondary school environment. Links with the teacher about he doesn't like this, she doesn't like that, so that can be supported for the class teachers, not just with the senior leadership team and not just with the SEND teacher, it's with the class teachers, because they're the ones with the child on a daily basis. And then we follow that through and catch ups with them when they've gone over to secondary, that we can start unpicking to make sure that transitions. And that's not saying all children, I think, would probably value transition, because it is a big leap from primary to secondary, but these are children that are identified, one, either through the SEND Inclusion Hub but recognised by the school, or two, because we've got the database from school education. We will sometimes run the file and see where they're getting anxious and the attendance is dropping, and we'll contact the schools and say, I think these would be great for the programme, how about bobbing them on? So it's done in a twofold, from a data way and from a school referral way.
I think that's how the SEND hubs kind of come into that as well, Casey, because even if the primary schools haven't identified a certain child that might struggle or might be struggling, because we as a service usually have the best relationship with that child, if we know that, we can then refer them into the hub, so it doesn't have to come through the school.
Fantastic. We've got about 10 minutes left. I would love people who've been listening to these presentations just to leave a comment in the chat. If it's not a question, maybe it's an observation, something that you've learnt from today. Um, please, I invite you to leave a comment, even if it's, God, that was interesting. It'd be wonderful feedback for us. Carrying on with some of the issues that I detected, that teen outcome star sounds a good one. I'm going to have to come back to you on that. $100 question: how is the sapling project funded?
It was initially and is currently through the Supporting Families funding, because I know that was a question back to Steve and his team, and they can refer to Supporting Families. Supporting Families in Staffordshire is a partnership approach, so everybody is on the agenda rather than it's a team you can refer to. So everybody in the local authority, health, housing, including ourselves in YOS, are part of that team and contribute. So it's funded by those because of the outcomes, and we use the outcomes framework from the Supporting Families. So children before they're closed are over 90% attendance for a whole school year, less than 2 fixed term exclusions for 12 months, sustained for 6 months. The schools have seen the benefit of that. So going forward, they're going to be funded through the Send Inclusion Hubs themselves, because the schools want to keep the model.
No, that sounds great. Dawn Anderson had a question. Dawn, do switch on your microphone if you can, and we'd love to hear from you. Maybe I've got to allow you to switch on your microphone. Let's see. Allowed to talk. Here we go. Are you there, Dawn? For some reason, Dawn, I'm trying to unmute you. Okay. Oh, I think you might be in, Dawn. Can you speak? Dawn, if you can't speak, if you wouldn't mind sort of typing your query into the chat pane, that would be fantastic. Or put it in the Q&A area. I've enabled you, but you don't seem to be coming through on our system.
Yes, Marius, he's enabled, but I don't know why he can't. Why there is nothing. Maybe he's they've got issue with the mic or something. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you for that. So Dawn, if you could type your question or query, that would be great. Well, I suppose from another factor that is so interested for me is the fact that in both of these case studies from Blackburn and Darwen and Staffordshire, what strikes me as the child is at the centre of the process. Gary's raised something in the chat pane. He says sorry, my chat is disabled for some reason, but he's put a question into the question and answer area. The live reporting system sounds absolutely amazing, and would be something incredibly helpful in the Bolton area. So Gary, I think do get in touch with your colleagues in Staffordshire. I'm sure they would welcome it. And Fido might well be a great way forward. Yes, guys, if you can't put anything in the chat pane for some reason, if you feel it's disabled for some reason, I don't know why, do use the Q&A function to just leave a comment or something of interest. Dawn, we're still Dawn. If you wouldn't mind trying to put a comment into the question and answer pane, that'd be great. I can't understand why you're not working, but this is great. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of today, but I'm going to stay on. I think the panelists will stay on a bit longer. The rest of you free to go. We'll keep recording, but I really hope you found that a useful and enlightening hour. I certainly did. My grateful thanks to Steve and Sharon, Blackburn and Darwen, Casey, Chloe, and Simon in Staffordshire. We hope to run another one, if not in a month's time, in 2 months' time, featuring 2 other areas. Guys, thank you for your contributions, and attendees, thank you so much for participating. I'll carry on, but do feel free to leave. I would, Giles Allchurch raised another issue. Said he really likes the outcome star as a measure of progress. So I think that's something I might well go on to find more about from Staffs and publish. Sapling project was particularly interesting to Megan. So important to support things as early as possible. Dawn has been unable to ask questions. So sorry about that, but she thought it was very interesting. And Gary said, "I'll be in touch." Thank you, Casey. Some lovely comments there. Again, thank you all for participating.